Good morning, everybody. Let's get started. Om Ganana Antva Ganapatigum Havamahe Kavim Kavinamupamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashunvannuti Dasadanam Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhirvajinipati Dhinama Vidyavata Om Ganeshaya Namaha Om Saraswatyai Namaha Om Gurubhyo Namaha Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Om Shanno Mitrasham Varunaha Shanno Bhavatvargyama Shanna Indro Bruhaspatihi Shanno Vishnurukramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Vadishyami Ritam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanmamavatu Tadvaktaramavatu Avatu Mam Avatu Vaktaram Om Shanti 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 Om Bhadram Karnebhih Shrunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangai Istushtruvagum Sastanubhihi Vyashema Devahitayadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vruddhashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarksho arishtanemihi Swasti no Brahaspatir dadhatu Om Shanti 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 Shuklam Baradaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। वागीशाद्याः सुमनसः सर्वार्थानामुपक्रमे यं नत्वा कृतकृत्या स्युः तं नमामि गजाननम्। वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय कोटिसूर्यसमप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणे विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। व्यासं वसिष्ठनप्तारं शक्तेः पौत्रमकल्मषं पराशरात्मजं वन्दे शुकतातं तपोनिधिम्। व्यासाय विष्णुरूपाय व्यासरूपाय विष्णवे नमो वै ब्रह्मनिधये वासिष्ठाय नमो नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम्। एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वदी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। यस्य सन्निधिमात्रेण सर्वे शिष्याश्च सेवकाः कर्मक्षेत्रे प्रवर्तन्ते चिन्मयं तं नमाम्यहम्। चिन्मयं तं नमाम्यहम्। चिन्मयं तं नमाम्यहम्। Hari Om everybody. Happy Navratri to all of you. Let me quickly recap what we have done so far. So far, we have learned several aspects of our culture, our Adhyatmika Samskriti, our spiritual culture, our Bhautika Samskriti, our material culture, and in general about pursuit of happiness. We investigated the happiness equation, and most importantly, in the first module, we talked a lot about Shreya, Preya, Viveka. Then in the second module, we learnt about the classification of our Shastras. Shruti, Smruti, Itihasa, Purana. And we learned that Vedas are the basis of our culture and it is our source book. We called it the Apurusheya Grantha. We learned that there are 4 Vedas: Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharvana Veda. We learned that there are Shad Angas, 6 limbs to these Vedas, and there are Upavedas like Ayurveda, etc. We learned that there are 3 subdivisions of each of these Vedas called Karma Kanda, Upasana Kanda, Jnana Kanda. Their main purpose is Chitta Shuddhi, purification of our mind, Chitta Ekagrata, single pointedness or concentration of our mind, leading to the knowledge of the self. And in module 3, we learnt about Karma Siddhanta, which is the basis for reincarnation. We learnt about types of karmas and how to divinize our actions. That means to turn karma to karma yoga. We learned that there is kayaka karma, actions by the body, vachika karma by speech, and manasika karma. And we investigated puja, japa, chintanam. And then we learned how to divinize our emotions. Bhakti, making the mind single pointed towards the Lord, and to gain that chitta ekagrata through upasana, leading from saguna sakara to nirguna nirakara brahma, from form to formless. Then in module 4, we learnt about Jnana Kanda, the knowledge portion of the Vedas. We learned that it is also called as Vedanta or Upanishads. We learned the meaning of the Upanishad, significance of Guru Shishya Parampara. We learned a little bit about Shad Darshanas, different philosophical thoughts, or the 6 schools of Vedanta. We learnt about Prasthana Trayi, Shruti Prasthana, Smruti Prasthana, and Nyaya Prasthana. We learned through a story of 4 sample Mahavakyas leading to the ultimate reality of Brahman. In our symbolism topic, we had also learnt a little bit about the prakara of the temple and the burning of the camphor, the process of sublimation, etc. in that module. Then we covered, along with Brahma Sutras as a part of the Prasthana Trayi, the 4 aspects of the deity. And we use Lord Narayana, Lord Shiva as examples in that module, in the last module. We learnt a little bit about Dharma Shastra, Manusmriti, and the Chaturvida Lakshana of Dharma. How Sanatana Dharma has those 10 values that we outlined. Then we studied a little bit about Varnashrama Dharma, duties given prescribed based on the stage of one's life. In that module, we learnt about the Dhyana Shloka of Vishnu Sahasranamam. Now, today, we are going to start with the gunas. Our scriptures are essentially saying that we are divine beings having a human experience, not human beings trying to get a divine experience, but we are essentially divine having a human experience. The famous Kannada poet and saint Purandara Dasa said, Alliruvudu nammane, illi bandiruve summane. We gather these life experiences kind of like passing through the transit lounge in an airport. And our divinity is veiled by our thoughts. When human beings get rid of all the thoughts and desires, the divinity which is already existing is unveiled. Kind of like the sun is temporarily covered by a cloud. Megha paye amshuman iva. And when the wind blows that cloud away, the sun, which was ever shining, becomes evident. So there are three types of thought textures: tamas, or inactivity; rajas, or activity based; sattva, unactivity. So tamas is the quality of mind of total inactivity. Often it is compared to a motionless fan. An idler who wastes time in laziness, sleep, etc. Alasya, it is called. I gave this example a few weeks ago when I was talking about this symbolic meaning of Navaratri. And today, Navaratri festivities actually begin. And in that, when I said Mahishasura Mardhini, today we will start the Durga Puja. Mahishasura Mardhini, that Mahisha, that buffalo in us, stands for that laziness, for that tamoguna. So we pray to Goddess Durga to remove these tamasic qualities within us. We pray 3 nights to Durga Devi, and then, if you recall, 3 more nights to Lakshmi Devi to give us Shama, Adi, Shakka, Sampatti. sixfold spiritual wealth. We also need the material wealth, but we mainly pray for spiritual wealth. And 3 nights after the mind is purified and single pointed, we pray to Goddess Saraswati to give us that self knowledge once our mind is purified. The second texture of our thought is Rajoguna. Rajoguna signifies a fan in motion. For example, a passionate youth, bristling with activity, vigor. That is the symbol of Rajoguna. Sattva or Sattva Guna, it may superficially seem as inactivity, but in reality, it is the quality of maximum activity. When a fan is revolving at such high speed that the motion is almost not perceptible to the naked eye, it seems as though stationary. Sattva Guna is of that quality. And Sattva is the subtlest of all of the 3 gunas. This is best suited for contemplation on the higher. When the mind is filled with qualities like equanimity, samatva, serenity, calmness of mind, creative poise, all these are examples of Sattva Guna. This example that I'm going to share with you is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, shloka number 38. Dhumena vriyate vahnihi yatha darsho malena cha yathol bena vruto garbha tatha tene damavrutam. So the sattvic desires veil the self. How do they cover the self? Like the smoke, dhuma, covering that self like the smoke. Even a passing breeze can remove the smoke. Not much effort is needed to stick on this path. Whereas a Rajasic person is agitated, stormy, ambitious, full of powering desires. So how does that veil the self? It veils the self like dust on the mirror. So when you see the dust on the mirror, in this case, effort is needed, karma is needed. Like a little bit of Windex, and some elbow grease. Similarly, scrubbing the mind to get rid of those rajasic desires is needed. Whereas tamas is filled with inertia, carelessness, pramada, no constancy of purpose, wavering always. The tamasic desire is like the fetus in the womb. There has to be a particular amount of gestation. It cannot be easily removed without effort. Just like fetus, it has to evolve into a fully grown baby to emerge out of the womb. These tamasic qualities have to have a gestation before it can be replaced with rajas. Somebody who is lazy, you cannot just give him sattva guna. You have to make him activity based, bring some discipline into their lives, and then gradually more serene qualities in sattva guna. So just like in a television set, you have CRT tube, cathode ray tube, as the most important component in a television. Our SRT tube, Sattva Raja Tamo Guna tube that we are in, is the one that projects the world. That leads us to the next topic of caste system, Varnashrama Dharma. Some people think it is controversial, but when you get to the meaning of it, it seems simplified enough. Varnashrama Dharma. In Sanskrit, Varna means color. It can also mean name, color, form, quality, relationship, all that. Just like how we divide plant kingdom and animal kingdom into various classifications depending on what type they are, herbivores, carnivores, etc. Human beings are also classified into 4 types. Bhagavan Krishna in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4-13 says, Chaturvarnyam maya srushtam guna karma vibhagashaha tasya kartaramapi mam vidya kartaram avyayam. He clearly states that 4-fold caste system has been created by me according to guna, temperament of the individual, and karma, the action or the karma pala. Brahmana, the thinking class, predominantly sattvic, with little rajas and little tamas, SRT dominant. Then you have Kshatriya, the leader class. Mostly has Rajasic quality, less of Sattva and a little bit less of Tamoguna. RST dominant. And the Vaishya, the business class, less of Sattva, less of Rajas, and a little more of Tamoguna. And the Shudra or the working class or the labor class has major share of Tamoguna with little of Rajas and little of Sattva. They have to be told what to do, and don't tell me what to do, just tell me, I will do it, sort of follower class. Therefore, this Chatur Varna is based on Guna and Karma. Guna Karma Vibhagasha, not Janma Karma Vibhagasha, not by birth. That is why we say all of us are born as Shudras. Janmana Jayate Shudra. That is why Brahmana is called Dvija, twice born. Our Pujya Guruji, Swami Tejomayanandaji, often gives this example. Society is like that cup of coffee with 4 ingredients, comparing it to the 4 castes or 4 divisions: water, coffee powder, milk, and sugar. Each ingredient has its special quality. We cannot say one ingredient is more important or more prominent than the other ingredient. If we do that, the proportionality of the coffee gets misappropriated. So only when you have the proper proportion of each of these ingredients, you will have a good cup of coffee. My late father, he always used to say this story as to how Alexander the Great, who had conquered most of the world, had just come to the borders of India. He was witnessing a war between the 2 local kings. The farmer was plowing the land next to the battleground, where a brutal war was going on between the 2 armies. The farmer is plowing the land next to the battlefield where these 2 armies are brutally fighting against each other. Alexander, who has conquered almost the entire world by then, has never witnessed this before. He goes to the farmer and asks him as to why he is not fighting that war. He says that is the job of the Kshatriya, to defend the nation. And I'm sure he will do a good job with it. My job is to plow the land and provide food to the society. Alexander was bewildered with this beautiful division of labor. I want to introduce you next to this beautiful chart which our Pujya Gurudev, Swami Chinmayanandaji, always used to explain all of the Vedanta, popularly known as the BMI chart, not the body mass index, but it is called the body, mind, and intellect chart. See, we gain the experience of this world when we receive a response. And respond and to the stimulus of this world. So we have the experience of the objects and let us examine the relationship between the two, the experiencer and the object of experience. How does this happen? Through the body, we experience a world of objects. We perceive an object. Through the mind, we experience the world of emotions. And through the intellect, we experience the world of thoughts. Identified with this body, we become the perceiver. Identified with this mind, we become the feeler. And identified with the intellect, we become the thinker. So this body, mind, and intellect equipment that we have is essentially inert, jada. That means they have no sentiency of their own. On the other hand, Atman or Brahman, the changeless reality, shown as Om in this diagram, here is the pure self that provides that sentiency to this inert matter and manifests as life principle. In the fourth module, I had outlined this as the absolute principle, that the supreme reality, Brahman, that the Upanishads are talking about. So this immutable Om is called that supreme reality. Sat Chit Ananda. Existence, consciousness, and bliss. that which remains unchanged in all three periods of time: the past, the present, and the future. And the V here in this diagram stands for vasanas, our innate tendency. Vasanas in Sanskrit means fragrance. And each of us have different personality fragrance as defined by our vasanas. There are three broad categories of vasanas called as loka vasana, a social urge to behave in a certain way; deha vasana, urges related to the physical body; and shastra vasana, tendencies related to our scholarly studies, whether it is related to secular or spiritual knowledge. So these vasanas provide a temporary veil of ignorance that hides our true nature. So the same self conditioned through the body, mind, and intellect equipment is called as the jiva or ego, that becomes the perceiver, feeler, and thinker. And as a result, suffers or maybe temporarily enjoys conditioned experience of finitude and limitations of the matter envelopment. So the self, which is limitless, unconditioned, blissful, which is our true nature, is beyond the three conditionings which we call as upadhis in Vedanta. So here is the journey of the spiritual self-unfoldment. Happens not because of the intellectual appreciation of this knowledge, but an enthusiastic participation of the seeker to remove this notional identity that has prevented this self-effulgent flow of divinity into our lives. With that much of introduction, let me introduce you to the topic of Panchakosha Viveka. There are 5 sheets that veil the self. The Atman or the self is represented by that Om in the middle. The 5 concentric circles shown as matter, as though enveloping that Atman or the self, are called the koshas or sheets. There are pancha koshas or 5 sheets. They are called as the outermost is the food sheet, the grocer. Then you have the pranamaya kosha. The outermost is called the annamaya kosha. The second layer is called the pranamaya kosha or vital air sheath. Next we have the manomaya kosha or the mental sheath. Then you have the vijnanamaya kosha or the intellectual sheath. And then you have the closest to the Atman called the bliss sheath or anandamaya kosha. We will go through that classification and I'll explain each of these in detail in the next class. So this is the Panchakosha model, and you have 5 koshas enveloping the Atman as though. That is what is the Panchakosha Viveka that we will analyze in the next class. That leads us to the symbolism topic of today. We will talk about Lord Shiva and Shivaratri. If you recall, I had touched upon this topic when I explained the concept of 4 aspects of a deity, and we had taken Lord Narayana, Vishnu, Bhagavan, and I had kind of briefly touched upon Lord Shiva. In its absolute form, Lord Shiva is formless, nameless, attributeless reality. In his cosmic form, Lord Shiva represents the destroyer of the world, playing his Tandava drum, dancing in a circle of flames as shown here in one of the images. Lord Shiva is often depicted as a Guru Avatara. Sri Dakshinamurti, Adi Shankara, Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya ji is believed to be a reincarnation of Lord Shiva himself. And the 4th aspect of Lord Shiva is the Ishtarupa. That is what we are going to talk about a little bit. The form chosen by the devotee as his Ishta or her Ishta Devata for personal worship. In this aspect, Lord Shiva has the Ganga Mata on his head, representing Gnana Ganga, the flow of knowledge. It also means symbolically that with knowledge You have to keep your head cool. Lord Shiva is Dvandva Atita. Dvandvatita. That means he has conquered the pairs of opposite. There is this crescent moon on his head, and then there is the poison. Moonlight symbolically represents life. When they fall on the earth, they nourish the vegetable kingdom. On the other hand, poison is death. So life and death. Janana Marana. In our life, what it is depicting is to bear those pairs of opposites, creation and destruction, joy and sorrow, sukha, dukkha, heat and cold, shita, ushna, success, failure, honor, dishonor, mana, apamana. And notice that this crescent moon is also crooked. Oftentimes, we overlook that while worshipping Lord Shiva. Meaning, some crooked disciples get worshipped along with the Paramaguru. Lord Shiva is also known as the blue-necked one. When Samudra Mathana happened, when the churning of the ocean happened, when Halahala Visha came, Lord Shiva drank the poison. He came to be known as Neelakantha. Lot of times, we cannot swallow the poison. That is the bitterness between the head and the heart. Notice that he did not become bitter himself. That means he did not spit it out either. He turned that into his ornament. He became known as Neelakantha. And I had already mentioned this in the last class. Snake stands for time. Snake also represents his fearlessness, abhayatva. Snake tells us that he is kala atita. He is beyond time. Snake also represents our mind, which spits out poison or negative thoughts. With all this going on, Lord Shiva, is smilingly in perfect control. No agitation to himself, no agitation to others whatsoever. That vibhuti or ashes that he wears on his forehead is a reminder to us all that one day we all end up as ashes or end up in ashes. Without Shiva, the life principle, the body is Shava. He is also known as Trilochana, the three-eyed one. The third eye stands for that eye of wisdom, Gnana Chakshu. And the two other eyes represent love and justice. So when we celebrate Shivaratri, we are awake until midnight, and that represents the Sandhi Kala. We stay awake until midnight, and Shivaratri signifies that we awaken out of our ignorance. And that Shiva Linga represents infinite geometric possibilities with no Adi and Ananta, no beginning, no end. That much is enough for the symbolic meaning of Lord Shiva and how we celebrate Shivaratri. Let's recap a little bit from today's class. We covered the three gunas, Tamoguna, Rajoguna, Sattva-guna. How this has veiled our divinity. We covered the Varnashrama Dharma and understood the broad classification of Brahmana, Vaishya, Kshatriya and Shudra based on guna and karma, not janma and karma. We understood how the body, mind, intellect equipment that we have is jada, inert, and how the self, which is of the nature of Sat Chit Ananda, is veiled because of our vasanas, which gives us a sense of limitation and finitude. I just introduced you to Panchakosha Viveka, which we will discuss in detail in the next module. And in the symbolism topic for today, we discuss the symbolism of Lord Shiva. In the next few classes, I'll talk about Panchakosha Viveka, Shariratraya Viveka, Avastatraya Viveka, the three states of existence, topic of Maya, Sadhana Chatushtaya, and a little bit of meditation. I will see you at the same time, same place next week. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrutyorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.